Welcome friends to Law Times. For the aspirants who are preparing for the examinations, it is necessary to know the Indian Evidence Act. Today we will see what is the evidence. Evidence means any proof in respect of any type of litigation which deals in a court of law or otherwise is a proof, evidence, basing on which, suppose if a person who is a litigant submitting it from other side and the another person is submitting it from the other side as a respondent or a defendant or maybe prosecution or accused. So every person who is appearing with a problem for solution from the Court of Justice or other arbitrating authority or tribunal, certain piece of papers will constitute to an offence, wherein after thorough scrutiny and evaluating the evidence and its values, the courts will render judgments, orders, decrees or otherwise. Now let us see why the Indian Evidence Act has come into existence. At the time of when Britishers were in India, after enactment of Indian Penal Code in 1860, it is also necessary for procedural courts and also a very crucial thing that Indian Evidence Act will play a vital role in the process of coming to a conclusion. That is why an Evidence Act has been introduced, enacted, and it has come into force from March 1872. It is called Indian Evidence Act. It is applicable to whole of India. After the abrogation of Article 370, Jammu and Kashmir, now it is applicable to entire India in all court proceedings. And for the purpose of Army Act, Air Force Act, Naval Act, everywhere it is permissible, except to some affidavits and the proceedings which may take place before the arbitrators. Therefore, by giving a broad look to the Indian Evidence Act, it is essential that what is that proof which makes consolidation of a case from either the side, contesting side or defending side. Now let us briefly see what Evidence Act deals with. The first chapter is a preliminary chapter, deals with a short title and extent and commencement, which I have told now. Then second section deals with repeal of enactment of the Repealing Act 1938, which was originally existing. Third is interpretation clause. How do you interpret a particular terminology or a document or evidence or a proof, a conclusive proof or circumstantial proof, which may support to the contention. And fourth, Chapter 4 deals with may presume. May presume in sense, I am sitting inside the room. Someone said that generally at 11 o'clock that person sits in the room. That can be broadly concluded that may presume that he is present in that room. It is not a conclusive proof unless and until it is proved. Now let us go to chapter 2, is in respect of dealing with the relevancy of the facts. What are those facts which are submitting before the court of law are relevant in coming to the point of deciding whether who is correct. So this has got from section 5 to section 55. The relevancy of fact chapter is a very big chapter. It is very necessary to understand. While we deal with the entire Evidence Act by chapter wise, interpretation wise, how we have to deal with the chapters, we will discuss it elaborately. This chapter deals up to section 55. Now the chapter 3, facts which need not be proved. Sometimes if we say that Taj Mahal, reference of a Taj Mahal, that need not be proved. It's a Taj Mahal. Red Fort is a Red Fort. Parliament of India is a Parliament of India. A state of Delhi is a state of Delhi. A fact which need not be proved. What the facts which need not be proved means chapter 3 deals with all types of judgments and the established facts from section 56 to 58. Now chapter 4, oral evidence, section 59 and 60. What are those oral evidences? That means spoken. Oral evidences which may be related to the issue or the charge or whatever the proceeding is taking place are so relevant in taking it to be in the form of evidence. Now chapter 5, documentary evidence. What type of documents which are so relevant, which can be treated as evidence, and basing on those evidences, what court can draw its own opinion while deciding a matter. In respect to this, it deals with section 61 to section 90A. Now chapter 6, the exclusion of oral evidence by documentary evidence. As we discussed about the oral evidence, if somebody said that orally this is what is the procedure that happened in respect of deciding one factor, suppose if that thing is superseded by a conclusive documentary evidence, then what is the procedure which is prescribed is in chapter 6, that is from 91 to 100. Now chapter 9, chapter 7, the burden of proof. What is the burden? The burden means something to carry. Who has to carry what? The burden of proof. Suppose if I puts a case on some person, either civil, criminal, revenue or whatever it is, the initial burden lays on my shoulders that whatever I asserted in my petition, that burden has to be first discharged. That burden has to be first kept it on before the court, that this is what the burden I have discharged. That means this is with evidences, proofs, collection of oral, documentary, conclusive proofs before a court of law. If burden of proof from my side is discharged, then the burden shifts to the other side, that they have to say and establish that no, this is not correct, this is correct. Then the court will interfere and look into which one is correct. This chapter, the burden of proof by chapter 7 deals with section 101 to section 114A. Now chapter 8, estoppel. What is an estoppel? If someone says that this is what has happened, or this is what is done, or this is what is decided, once a decided factor, once something is established, in contrary to that, the same person should not speak in another way. He cannot traverse his own submission. That is what is estoppel. That is in chapter 8, deals with section 115 to 117. Now chapter 9, in respect of the witnesses, which deals with section 118 to section 134, how witnesses have to be treated. Either list of witnesses is enclosed with the litigation papers, or any new witnesses are required. What has to be recorded, what has to be elicited, how witness examination has to be done, how cross-examination has to be done, all these things are explained in that. Like in the next chapter, Chapter 10, the examination of the witnesses. As I was telling, that witnesses have to be examined. In what manner the witnesses have to be examined, whether it is by way of affidavit and cross-examination, chief examination, and to what extent a witness can be put to question in respect of the relevancy, in respect of the litigation. So all the parameters are being explained thoroughly from section 135 to section 166. Now the chapter 11 deals with improper admission and rejection of evidence. Section 167. This is the last section of the Evidence Act, that this deals with the improper evidence, the evidence which may not be proper in relevant of the case or the proceeding, and what is the procedure that an evidence has to be rejected. Therefore, today we have seen the introductory part of the Evidence Act, and in the coming sessions we will see thoroughly every section of Evidence Act, that how it deals with, how it is connected with every law, every proceeding, every matter before a court of law. Hope you understood this matter and the explanation of introduction of the Evidence Act. Please do like the channel and share and subscribe.